Peace and love, joy and prosperity. Welcome to the room. Welcome to this sacred space, this squared circle of gods and goddesses. All is truly in. You are now sitting live with the Divine Prince, and always in archive at your leisure and convenience with the Divine Prince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagoon, Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeah, Okur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and my ever living reality. And it is indeed crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, my works, my ultimate demonstration, mine all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding, the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe, Asheo, Ashe. Today is Thursday. I believe it's February 6th. February 7th, we and indeed a blessing, and I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you live here on YouTube Live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum, universally, from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince. Thai Emmecca, Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central, Black Hawk Voodoo, in this legendary, historic, beautiful, and most enchanted city in New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this spiritualist, Hoodoo, Obeah life path and journey, passing down the great Obeah stick, along with the healing of the knowledge of the roots, herbs, rituals, spirits, and minerals. I'm always humbled and honored and appreciative by those who choose to take time out of the middle of their day to be present in this space with me here for the Power Lunch, Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. I'm sure some of you know we are in the throes of Carnival in New Orleans. We're quickly counting days up to Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, the culmination of Carnival season, if you will. So as a masking Mardi Gras Indian, I'm not getting a lot of sleep, not getting a lot of rest. I'm sewing, beading, sequencing by hand, while also attending to the duties and responsibilities that are the vocation of voodoo. And many of you, even some of you right here in this room, know that I manage to keep a balance between culture, performance, life, and then that which is the voodoo. And I make time, I make space respectively for the voodoo. I'm open to all that is operating for my good here and now in this moment in time space. For indeed, it is right now that we plant seeds. It is right now that we create and recreate the future we perceive, that we wish, that we seek. It is right now in this present moment in time space that we have any opportunity to heal, to bring balance to that which has already gone before us. So seize this moment. Indeed, seize this moment. um, Take this opportunity to make the changes, utilizing the power that the ancestors and the spirits and the Most High have given us to create and be co-creators in our reality. We are in the waxing crescent, I believe, and it is a time for planting seeds, for preparing for that which is to come. for laying down a foundation, a map for that which you wish to see manifest, be real, be relevant in your life. And I find it curious how every year, every new year, we have these resolutions, we have these ideas of things that we're going to do differently, address differently, handle differently, approach differently, make all these great, phenomenal changes. And indeed, we have an opportunity each day and each moment to start anew, to start again, to begin again, to do those things which are in your best interest, those things which are in balance with nature and spirit. For indeed, voodoo is nature. Without nature, there would be no voodoo. And so we give thanks and honor to Mami Wata and the spirits of the sea and the spirits of the water, the spirits of birth and renewal, and that which gives us life, the elixir of life that is water. We find a balance of water in our earth plane existence. We have salt water and we have fresh water. We have brackish water, and we have that which gives us our life, our food, that which we drink, that which we take into our bodies for the maintenance of life. And so we acknowledge the powers of the sea. We acknowledge the powers of the water. We acknowledge Mami Wata and Yemiya and Olokun and all of those spirits, Oshun, that govern fluidity, balance, hormonal balance, chemical balance, but also a figurative and a literal spiritual balance, which we all seem to be in desire of and in need of in today's culture and today's society. Many of us have lived through generations of advertisements and commercialization and bastardization of anything remotely authentic to indigenous practice, culture, traditions, and teaching. We have a unique opportunity today with today's environment, with today's technology, with today's super highway of information and people's ability to tap information. And we must make a clear distinction between information and knowledge. We must make a clear distinction between knowledge and wisdom. They suggest a evolutionary process of first understanding something, taking something in at its most basic level, at its most visual level, and then understanding it. Once you really understand that 1 + 1 equals 2, no matter what combinations, no matter how many denominations, no matter where that shows up in your life. So wisdom is the application of that which we know, that which we understand. Experience in walking in that, demonstration in walking in that. And that is what establishes what eldership is, who our mentors should be, who our leaders should be. In the course of the last 2 days, it's been a lot of conversation about initiations and particularly travel. Many people that I've been talking to have traveled to Ghana, have traveled to Nigeria, have traveled to Panama, have traveled to Brazil, seeking that which many of us seek. And I often say that there is a thirst, there's a hunger for indigenous culture, but particularly ATR culture as it relates to the African American community and many people of color here in the States. And it is palatable. It is something now that by way of the internet, we have an opportunity to demonstrate by way of what we post, what we share, what we acknowledge, what we put a hashtag on. So we've also talked about those that would seek to prey upon that population. And indeed, I believe we are ahead of the current. We are ahead of the tide. You're going to see an increase of practitioners representing world religions, world traditions in a more traditional setting, foreign lands, foreign nations, with, again, very little identifying marks, very few profile pictures, very few actual moments captualized in film or video showing them being active in this practice, in this tradition, in an authentic way, in a real world way. So I'm very proud, I should say, of my followers and my people, and my friends and my godchildren, and those who are ahead of sort of this trend. Because indeed, we have the power through knowledge. We have the power through knowledge. If we know what these traditions look like, if we understand what these traditions look like, if we understand what an initiation is supposed to look like, sound like, taste like, feel like, how long that should be, then there will be less opportunity for these opportunists to capitalize on your thirst for ATR. We are thirsty for ATR. And I'm accused of talking about the Orisha romance and the sort of the romancing of ancient Egypt and the romancing of voodoo and hoodoo to some degree, and rightfully so, because if we don't acknowledge that is which is sacred, we cannot then expect the next person, the next man, the next woman, the next race, the next industry to then acknowledge that which is sacred. We set the demonstration. And I want more than just clients. I want more than just people who are looking, seeking. I want to make kings and queens and gods and goddesses and practitioners of this tradition. For indeed, I can't do this by myself. This is bigger than me. Voodoo is bigger than me. Ifa is bigger than you. Santeria is bigger than us all. Palo is bigger. Kandable is bigger. And the umbrella that is African-based traditional systems is global. Voodoo is global. Voodoo is worldwide. So we have an opportunity to not only set a foundation for those who will join us, but who will also follow us in this pathway that is ATR. Whatever your path is, whatever your tradition is within the system, if you don't respect Ifa, Voodoo won't be respected. If you don't respect Palo, Santeria won't be respected. If we don't honor and acknowledge and respect Kandable, none of the traditions will be respected. So we are a community. We are a nation under the umbrella that is African-based traditional systems. So not only should we expect to see respect given, shown, demonstrated from those outside the community, we also must hold each other up to a higher standard of responsibility, of accountability for what we say and how we demonstrate and represent this that we say belongs to us. This that we know and understand exists at the DNA level, in the DNA memory. Also, you survived the Middle Passage. That makes you a god. You survived enslavement. That makes you a goddess. But indeed, know and understand, the voodoo has never left the DNA memory. The Ifa, the Akan, the Fa, the Igbo, these traditions, these memories have never left us. They just need to be awakened. They just need to be brought forward. And many of you are having dreams of old. I like Ziggy Marley's song, Dreams of Old. Many of us are absolutely living that. We are now on the post-dreams of old generation, where we've had those dreams, we've had those flashbacks, we've had those memories, and now we're struggling for a way of operating within that. And many of you, rightfully so, I would be counted among them, coming out of abusive Christian, Islamic, Judaistic systems that have really left a footprint on our minds and our consciousness about what religion even is and what religion even looks like, about what spirituality is or what it even looks like. And in this technologically advanced world of visual stimulation, where it's about what we see as opposed to what might be beneath the surface, what might be deeper at work. We've got to develop greater relationship building skills. I'm often asked, how do I initiate? But I'm often asked, how do I better my relationships? How do I better my marriage? How do I better my opportunity to capture a mate in my 40s or my 50s, you know, as we continue to grow and advance in other arenas of our lives. Many of you have great careers. Many of you have great educations. Many of you are wildly popular in your communities. Many of you are selling products and are self-employed and are entrepreneurial, uh, but are lacking, not because you're flawed, but because you're human. Lacking because you lack the information, lack the knowledge, lack the teaching, lack the experience, and in many cases, lack the demonstration. We often don't have people who can role model for us that which we are seeking, that which we are visualizing. And many of you visionaries among us are seeing things well into the future that others will not see, that others will not understand, others will not comprehend, to sometimes generations later. So it is important, it is important that we respect first our own journey of spirit, first our own journey of becoming an individual, but then a practitioner, an artisan, a musician, an instructor, a creator within the universe that is ATR. There's so many things available to us other than just being a great mambo, other than just being a babalao, other than just being Ianifa. There are many components, parts to the body of ATR traditions that hold all of this together. We need historians, we need archaeologists, we need authors, we indeed need craftsmen. I need people who can bead and sew like right now. Okay. I need people who actively want to become priests and priestess and armor bearers and practitioners and drummers in this tradition right now. And some of the blessings that I'm receiving, I can't contain in my cup alone. Some of the projects that I'm receiving require other people, require dancers, require musicians, require other people to be a part of that project, of that wholeness. So we've got to regain our ability, our understanding of what relationship is, how to introduce ourselves and be open. Many of us are closed out of fear, closed out of anxiety, closed off, shut off, got a cement wall with a steel encagement around it because of pressure, because of abuse, because of the past, because of the history, because of the things that have happened. Hindsight. And indeed, we can fix to what we can fix, we can address to what we can address, we can heal to what we can heal right in this moment in time space. We can't go back, but that which we have access to in this moment where the magic is can be healed, can be fixed, can be repaired. But we've also got to be willing to be honest about it. We've also got to be willing to be honest about who you are, where you are in your walk, you know, which identity you're operating in at this moment in time space. For indeed, we all have many personalities. We all have many, many identities. Some of you are so caught up in this beard, and I appreciate this beard, but know that there will be a day that there will be no beard. Know that there will be a day I'll have makeup on. Know that there will be a day I'll be in another movie or another production, and I'll be representing another aspect of who I am. It doesn't mean that I'm a shapeshifter. Doesn't mean that I'm out of touch with any aspect of my being. It's about unifying who we are so that we can operate in Mami Wata's fluidity. Just imagine the flowing of the waters. Just imagine the flowing of the skirts of Yemaya and Mami Wata. It's about balance. It's about fluidity. There's no rigidity there. There's no black and white there. There's no things are one way and another way without understanding that there's a unified wholeness to all of this, to all of this. So I acknowledge and respect Cuba. I acknowledge and honor and respect Haiti. I acknowledge and honor and respect Brazil. I acknowledge and honor and respect Oshobo land and Oyo and Ghana and Senegal and many other portals doorways into the diversity of who we are as a people. But let us not overlook who we are here on this land. I believe we are a new, peculiar generation. We have been through a sift of not just enslavement in the Middle Passage, but white supremacy and brainwashing and brain programming and a whole new way of identifying ourselves in the context of reality. Some of us aren't even clear about what reality is anymore, based on where we find ourselves collectively as a people, as a society, as a community. So I found my salvation in voodoo. I'm not a prophetizer. I'm not here to preach. I'm not knocking on the door with a voodoo tract saying that I'm here to save you and your people. But I believe our only salvation is in that which is in us. And voodoo might not be you. Voodoo might not even be present in your DNA. That DNA thing is critical for me. That ethnicity thing is critical for me. And are we a mix of many things? Absolutely. And I can identify that mix as it exists within myself. And then as it exists, as it shows up in the voodoo, in my magic. I'm a practitioner of Marasa, if you don't know. And it's all about duality, polarities, operating on both sides and in the middle, on top and in the bottom and in the middle, to the left and in the right and back to the middle again. It is the domain in which Legba exists at the crossroads. It's at the crossroads. And so when we open up a ceremony and we acknowledge the ancestors, we acknowledge Legba. Indeed, Marasa is very close in order of synchronicity in terms of how the structure of a ritual ceremony is performed. Um, we all require a spirit double. We all have a spirit double, both in the spiritual realms, but then one who manifests in earth, who assists us in our journey. It's irregardless of gender, it's irregardless of many of the peculiarities that we focus on in today's culture society, which blind us to the power of spirit, to the true power of magic, to the true power of science. I say almost every day I don't want to talk 20 minutes, but I always end up doing so. I greet each and every one of you for being present here in this squared circle of gods and goddesses. I welcome each and every one of you individually and collectively. I am looking for your questions, comments, and requests. Please do type them in capital letters. That makes it easier for me to separate them from the general conversation. Greetings, Dark Girl Tantra, KMU, Go Soul, I appreciate you. Ashna Mahari, Ashna Malvri. I'm going to get your name right one day. Mahari, Ashna Mahari, Martha Martinez. I welcome all of you. I thank my regulars for being so present and so consistent and for showing your love and your support, not only to just the voodoo, but to New Orleans and New Orleans culture. Some of you absolutely understand what Carnival is. Some of you absolutely understand what masking Mardi Gras Indian is. Some of you absolutely understand what masking a Gungun masquerade is, and the time, resources, and effort that it takes to make that happen. We become spirit. We transcend humanity. We don't eat. We don't sleep. We sew 12, 16 hours a day to make something of this happen every year for Mardi Gras Day. And it's a great deal of pressure. Just today, Mamba Marie asked me, was I sewing and was I ready? Just today, people who understand the value of this as relates to culture, and particularly to the voodoo, understand the pressure. So I really appreciate those of you who are so consistent and so loving and so supportive and so involved in not only the voodoo itself and the showing of the voodoo, but also in the machinery and the mechanics of the voodoo. I appreciate that. Amina is one of the first people that I've made moderator in the chat. So please do show all respect to Amina. She's not here to, beat nobody over the head, but we just want y'all to be respectful to one another, but also to yourselves. Also, it's almost impossible to do a show like this and stay connected with you intimately in the moment, and then have to scan chat over here and look for questions and then get back. So she can also help me to see and catch things in chat quicker than if I'm having to multitask while still doing the show at the same time. So I appreciate that. I certainly do. Also, I want to remind you that I have an annual ceremony, April 1st, every year. Generally speaking, the ceremony is for initiates already in the process of initiation. And I want to talk about that just a little bit today. I've got a lot of questions about initiation, not just with me, but just the nature of initiations in general. Me and a friend were talking earlier about traveling to Ghana and traveling to Nigeria and her travels and her experience in doing that. And many of you know I've never left the country. I've never been to Africa. I get accused of being African. I get accused of lying about not being from Africa. I've had Nigerians and Ghanaians accuse me of coming to America and pretending to be American because they indeed see Africa when they see me. And I believe that we can repatriate. We have to repatriate first in the mind, in the heart, in the body, in the soul, in the spirit, before any physical repatriation will do any amount of magical transformation. And that is one of the things that she and I discussed, that she had been, she had seen, she experienced the vibration while she was in Nigeria. She experienced the energy while she had been in Ghana. And she felt separate. She didn't feel she got intimate contact with not only the practice itself, but the people. And so how can you then expect to spend any numerous amount of money, understanding it's going to cost you at least $10,000 to go to Ghana and get some kind of a Khan ceremony or initiation, or Nigeria. And I know many who've done it more than once, and who have come back with garments and jewelry and taurines and implements and beautiful items and things, but very little connection, very little teaching, very little hands-on instruction. And let's be logical. Let's be logical. How much can you learn really in a weekend to Haiti, in a 2-week trip to Haiti, in a month-long stay in Haiti or Cuba or Nigeria? How much can you really learn, absorb, and contain? So your initiation should really start long before you make that trip. And some of you who've never made that trip might say, okay, all right. Some of you who've made that trip, I think, fully understand exactly what I mean. The initiatory process is not something that is hit or miss. It's not something that we can do in a relatively clearly defined time period. And I'm going to tell you why. One, all of you don't learn at the same pace. I have a godchild, one of my most faithful godchildren, one of my strongest godchildren, still can't separate the Yoruba from the Ebe. I struggle every day to get him to understand that there's a protocol for these languages. And if you're going to use Ebe, speak in Ebe. Begin in your conversation, your paragraph in Ebe. And I'm still struggling to get him to stop going back and forth between Yoruba, because I often teach a foundation in Yoruba, because Yoruba are the most prolific documentors, the most prolific in terms of book information is in Yoruba. And if you're not understanding what I'm saying, Google right now, find Akan, Eve, Igbo, and Google even more specifically the gods of those traditions, you'll find how complex what I'm talking about is. Here's the reason. First, the Yoruba are the most educated ethnic group in America, if you didn't know that. They are the most degreed, the most educated. I would say that that might be the case in the UK. I might say that that's the case worldwide. They have the most published information about Yoruba culture. Now, we bear some responsibility to that because we have this beloved Orisha romance. So when you think of that, and then you think of the Yoruba community in Brazil, in South America, in Central America, then there's a great deal of Yoruba, Orisha-based information out there. But it's hard for you to find Eve deities and in a language that you can understand. Many of these other ethnic groups, particularly when we think of Voodoo, for instance, we think of places like Togo, Benin. Okay, so now you're talking about at least understanding French. And then in the case of education, because, you know, we like to assume Americans are some of the most educated people in the world. And indeed, we have some of the best schools in the world, but we're not some of the most educated people in the world. Okay, so when we look at other regions of the world, okay, they might speak French because French was enforced upon them, just like English was enforced upon us. But how many of your Black brothers and sisters from the hood really speak English properly? So when we look at Africa, you can't assume that just because they say I'm from Togo that they're going to speak correct French. Because when you start going to that Google Translate and start using a more formalized French, you can't break that down into Ebonics, French style. You can't break that down into how they speak French on the street in Togo. And then they're going to fill in with their natural language, just like we do here. So that's going to be Fon or Eve or some other dialectic challenge that most African Americans, people of color, Americans are not going to have readily had experience with or knowledge of. So the idea that there's so many barriers to our accessing these cultures and these traditions. And when we look at the Hispanic community south of the border, many of them are born, it's a part of their economy. It is a part of their system of doing things. So there is a pathway for them to access many of these traditions that has not yet been made readily available to us. I remember when Olatunji was being developed, and yeah, I'm a little bit older than some of y'all thought I was, okay? But I remember when Olatunji was being popularized, if you will, and the challenges that they had in doing so, even with the relationship with Africa, I would say it's sometimes strained because there's this idea that the parents of this, therefore the authorities of this, automatically reside and exist on the continent, and that anything then that touches water is somehow weakened, diluted, affected by. And there again are many reasons for that. One is the overall lack of information. But then there is white supremacy, there is colonization and the effects that had on the continent. I have found in my experience that many West Africans have been westernized, Christianized, Islamicized, and don't embrace these traditions anymore, and only do so in a very touristic manner. They know you're thirsty for it, they know you're coming. They've created a whole industry around it for you. But in their regular, everyday waking lives, they have a desire to be American. It's almost like a reversed migration. We had a migration of Blacks fleeing the South and moving north here in America in the early 1900s. And so I'm seeing a similarity in that we are now beyond the church, beyond civil rights, post those movements that have given us some degree of satisfaction, but not anywhere near what we seek or desire. And so now we are seeking to go back. Whereas when we look at our African brothers and sisters in West Africa, they seeking to be very UK, very American, very Japanese, wherever we may find them in the world. And they don't always believe these traditions in the way that many of us are seeking to occupy these traditions even in today. So listen, I embrace you in the confusion that is trying to connect with these traditions. I embrace you in the challenge that is in trying to connect with these traditions anywhere in the world, whether it's here in the States, whether it's going south of the back to the motherland. You're not crazy. It's not you. It absolutely is confusing. In some ways, I would say it's designed to, to be confusing and to maintain that so that the money changers stay in position, and so that the flow of economy and economics stays the way that it has been now since at least the 1960s. Understand all of this is relatively new on this side of the water and that side of the water. All of this is relatively new. And in many ways, we are leading a resurgence in indigenous-based practice in West Africa because of the desire in the modern world for it. But we've got to hold everybody's feet to the fire, theirs, but also our own. And so we've got to ask questions. Identify yourself. There's no reason you should be representing Ifa or Voodoo in social media and you do not have a legitimate profile picture. And not just one, because some of them are listening to us. They're listening to us in Nigeria and they're listening to us in Ghana. They've seen the posts that we put up in Instagram, about these fake West African practitioners with the bloody ritual photos. And if you've noticed, some of them have made some adjustments, but not many. So one in particular has real people now in some of the pictures, but you don't see nobody's face. All you see is their hands and their arms and their head like this. But you're not seeing nobody's face. You're not seeing anybody's identity, okay? And you're not seeing it in a consistent manner. And when they approach you, some of you I know are just blocking them. Okay, that works. But if you are like me and you like a challenge and don't be confrontational, be passive aggressive. Ask them, say greetings and then act like you really want to get to know them. Who are you? What's your name? Who your mom and them? Where do you live? Where is that in Nigeria? What town is that in? You will quickly figure out who want to be bothered with you and who doesn't. And it's really no different than trying to communicate with any Westerner in social media. Some of you absolutely don't want to be known. Some of you absolutely got 5, 6, 10 different personalities in social media. I mean, different identities, and that's your right. That's your business. But those of us who are saying that we are representing any kind of leadership, any kind of practitioners in this, don't have the luxury of having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different personalities, different identities. You got to then be consistent about who you are and what you're representing. You can't come to me and say, I want to be a priestess in Voodoo, and then you half naked on your page the next day for something less than a sacred reason, for something less than something truly righteous. So we've got to get clear and stop just complaining about them coming at us and not being clear. We too got to be clear. We're drawing that as a target. They're showing up, and if I wasn't clear already in the Instagram post, if you don't know, some of you don't understand all these social media tricks, you can add all the friends of anybody else who's on Instagram. And there are applications that make this easy. So what's happening now is these practitioners are adding all of my friends. And then if you look strong, at least in your interest, your curiosity in this, they're adding you and all your friends. And then they're soliciting you all for readings and services. Aggressively, I might add in some cases. Some of you have had your families and your personal lives threatened by these people, that if this work isn't done, imminent danger is coming. All of these are signs of fraudsters and scamsters and things that we should always, use some common sense about. Every generation says, I got this, I know what's happening. And then the next generation comes with a whole new scam, a whole new game, and then everybody has to relearn this thing on the move. Just like we have to relearn internet security, your email security, protecting your passwords and your usernames, But one of the easiest things to do, which interestingly people find the most complicated thing to do, is to ask questions, is to get to know. So, I've got some recent requests, and I'm beloved, I'm waiting on you to show up. I'm just waiting on you to show up. I hear you say, I want to connect, I want to be a part of, I want to grow in this. I'm just waiting for you to open the door. I'm waiting on you to open up. I'm not a strong arm proselytizer. I'm not Miss Cleo. I'm not Call Me Now. I'm not California Psychics, which is driving me crazy every time I see that commercial, you know. And people in this room will tell you, I don't send you emails. I don't ask you, what do you need? I don't ask you, what can I do for you? How may I assist you today? That's not my job. And at my level of ministry, I'm a celebrity, spiritualist, worldwide, globally known. I don't have the time. I'm doing enough just to handle the emails and the incessant phone calls and texts and Skypes that I have to deal with now. So I'm not sending you those kind of thirsty DMs begging you to utilize my service. I don't beg anybody to use me. I don't. I don't. I hope my demonstration speaks for itself. I pray that the people who do come to me come because they see something in my demonstration. They see something maybe in the demonstration of the people who publicly admit that they are working with me, but not because I had to con you into it, not because I had to trick you into it, not because I had to get butt naked with my Lakers on, and surround my body with honey and dollar bills. That ain't why y'all coming to me for this voodoo. But for some reason, they seem to feel, just like a TV commercial, that that's what you all want. And so that's why we're seeing such a prolific amount of it in social media, is because for somebody, it's working, at least at the response level. At least you're responding to it, you're clicking like to it, you're sharing it. I don't know how much you all are actually, invested with these characters, but we know the popularity of just the imagery keeps some of this shenanigans going. I certainly appreciate you all. Come on now, it's 45 minutes into the show. If you all don't have no questions that you all are going to type in this chat, I'll end this show in in the next few minutes, and I can go and have lunch. But if you all indeed have questions, comments, please let me have that. This is the place for that. This is the place to ask that. This is the place for that debate. This is the place for that argument. And some of you all are still questioning me. Well, question. I don't understand the shadiness of the last 20 years. I don't understand the underhandedness of the last 100 years, and how we spit at each other in Instagram and in Twitter and in Facebook. But we just can't come together and say, listen, I have questions. What can you tell me? I absolutely do that. And, it's worked for me in most cases. Now, some people find me passive aggressive. Some people find me overtly aggressive for asking questions. But It's not just the act of asking questions, it's the act of asking intelligent questions, questions with a point, questions with a destination. Um, a quick example, to send me an email and say, I'd like to talk to you, doesn't tell me anything. You'd like to talk to me about what? When? Where? you know, I need some communication. We've got to relearn communicating. We've got to relearn how to build relationships for our best well-being, for our own well-being, but for that of the community. The sharing of Ashe is critical to this. The sharing and conferring of Ashe is critical to relationship building, both with the deities, the Loa, the Orisha, the various deities of the other ethnic groups that I don't always speak out loud here on the show, but each ethnic group has a language and has a word usage. I often use that which is most common to us, and that is often Yoruba. But we've got to build relationship with both ourselves, spirit, and each other. That is the purpose of life. That is the purpose of the cycle of life. That is the purpose for humanity and our being in physical inhabited form in the first place. I have a partner out there coming, but you got to be willing to open your mouth and speak up to who you are and speak your truth and stand in your truth. Only then can we come together and move this Morasa thing forward. Please, y'all, give me your next question. Tamika Miller, I would say cleansing with hyssop and sage is good. It's good for almost anything. I'm not quite sure what you mean by sufficient. Um, could you add something to that? Perhaps it depends on what you're trying to do, what you might be specifically confronted with or dealing with in that moment in time or space. Even if you feel I'm not challenged particularly with anything, we look at the sign, we look at the time, we look at the moon cycle, and in the ritual practices, we look at the spirits that govern the day. Iba Yemaya, Mathre Thumb, Olaku. So I think they're good for any work, but in terms of sufficient, suggests something being specific. When I see sufficient, I think specific. And so I would have to then look specifically to what ritual work are we talking about? Are you advancing in? And then I might add something to that. Then I might tweak that. But Tamika Miller, on its own, your question is sufficient. Your process is sufficient. Ashley Harris, as it relates to our ancestors, how do we determine which are Egungun versus Egun? All the dead are Egun. All the dead are Egun. The Gede in Voodoo signify the dead that represent unresolved issues, unresolved business. When we think of Fa or Ifa in Yoruba culture, which is where the word Egungun comes from, then we're talking about elevated ancestors. Now, sometimes they are people who did great works in life, Marcus Garvey, Mahalia Jackson, Dr. King, whoever you might list there, but also those within your family, within your bloodline, the big mamas and the big papas, the matriarchs and the patriarchs, they would have had a pronounced footprint in life as well as on the other side. Now, every Egun, every spirit doesn't just cross over and then evolve, and then he magically, be operating, vibrating at a higher level. And that's why not all Egun speak. That's why not all the dead speak or meant to speak or meant to come through. And some of you are trying to force recently transitioned family members to communicate with you when it may not be appropriate to do so. It may not be their time to do so. And indeed, if they had work that needed to be fixed, repaired, then they may have to transition through that before they are then able to communicate with us. So Egun itself is seen as a deity, not quite an Orisha, but a deity, a representative might be a better word, of the dead. So there is an Egun who is representative of the dead, just like Galede is representative of the dead, just like Gede is representative of the dead, just like um, I'm trying to think of all the various forms of dead that I can think of right now. They all different variations of the dead, but they represent very distinct powers and very distinct patterns of evolution on the other side when we start talking about the dead. So in Haitian voodoo, Gede is not invited to the ceremony. And we've romanced and popularized Gede to some degree. But Gede shows up uninvited to an authentic Haitian voodoo ceremony. One eye, his glass is missing, or the glass is upside down, um, looking sort of a mess. And they represent those unresolved issues within the family, those unresolved things. And so we placate Gede to keep them from being disruptive. Just like we feed and acknowledge Egun in Yoruba and other West African traditions in order to placate spirit. When we think Egungun, such as the Egungun masquerades, absolutely we have invited those ancestors into our space. They have now come to bless, sometimes to curse, sometimes to have show grievances about things that have gone unrepaired, unacknowledged. And so, again, going back to Haitian voodoo, Gede represents that which is unacknowledged, unrepaired, unfixed. The alcoholism in the family, the abuse in the family, the molestation in the family, criminality in the family. And indeed, when we look at the character Beran Samdi, Beran has many personalities, many faces, and some of them sketchy. Baron Criminel, for instance, is sketchy and represents a form of Gede, a family that we wouldn't necessarily invite. Now, we know that in Mexico and in some drug quarters of the world, they are now using saints, and particularly saints of the dead, to protect their activity. So we talked about this a little yesterday in how we know that these traditions had a very specific use, purpose, system. You would have been born into your lineage, uninstructed by slavery. In a perfect world, you would have been born into your lineage. You would have known who your ancestors were. Your family, maybe even your compound and your village, would have had a particular deity or group of deities or orishas that would have been a part of your lineage that you would have acknowledged. Here, access to lineages, buying access to deities, buying access to Orisha that may not match what's going on at your DNA level. And that's why I stress that so much. So in terms of who we're inviting in the West, whether it be the dead, whether it be Orisha, Loa, or any other deity or power from any of these other world cultures, it's often absent of the inner workings, the inner knowledge. There's a way of reducing things down, dumbing things down to a point that what's most authentic about it is no longer there. It's no longer present. I know I say a lot and I know I tend to digress. I hope I'm answering your questions. If I'm not, please come back, hit me back with the follow-up in caps so that I can see them. Ashley Harris, I hope I got that answered for you. Do I believe in this twin flame business? Oh, fire reds, that's a good one. Do I believe in this twin flame business? And do I believe in, not that you said it, soulmates? Soulmates, again, another commercialized product of the Western world. Indeed, we have companions. We have spirit companions. We have soul mates, ES with a plural on the end, soulmates. But we often think of a soulmate as a lover, a sex partner, somebody we're supposed to marry for life. We often think in those terms. And often I use other structures to explain something because those other structures are often familiar to us, right? So I use symbolism from the Bible as an example. So if we believe that there was this Christ and that he was the Son of God, and that somehow he empowered all the majesty that is God, well, we know that is too much power for one human body to maintain. We know this. God can't put all his power in the one human body or it would explode. Okay. God had to put himself into all humanity because God is bigger than that. Okay. So soulmates travel in clans, travel in groups, travel in families. You will find at least 5 people in the course of your lifetime that you will connect to on a very deep, intimate, and emotional level without very much work at all. And some of those relationships will endure. I know people in my life 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, but that doesn't mean that we are soulmates in the classical, intimate Valentine's Day perspective. Another misunderstanding about twin flames and soulmates is that it's always about love. And a great deal of the time, it's about unfinished business, partnerships, marriages, relationships, and not just love, siblings, brothers and sisters, people who've been initiated into traditions in other lifetimes, who stay connected at the root level, who then traverse time and space together. So soulmates and twin flames are legitimate words, but the concepts are not legitimate. And how they are often visualized in the West are not legitimate. Another way of looking at it is to make a serious study into twin courts. Twin courts, for my new viewers, is any court that has 2 terminations on it. Often it'll have a shared base or maybe even a naturally broken off base, but it'll have 2 points on it. And I've showed a variety of twins here on camera in the last few days. This is another twin. This actually is citron. I know you can't really see the yellow with this yellow suit behind me, but this is actually citron, a very faint citron. But we're talking about twins. And twins will grow and will manifest in the crystalline kingdom in a similar fashion to how soulmating and twinning happens in the real world. This is also a twin, but this is a double terminated twin. So the idea that we somehow come together as soulmates, as twins, only for the purpose of love and relationships is just totally off. And again, quite often there is unresolved work, unresolved issues, unresolved patterns, unresolved blessings, gifts, skills that have to manifest that require those 2 people, those 2 partners to work together. And so we do see twin flames, twin souls in love and relationships, but we also see them in great music writing teams. We also see them like Ashford and Simpson, who did have a love relationship, but their relationship as artisans supersedes that. And I'm sure they would even say probably preceded that love thing. Sometimes the soulmate comes to show you where you are in your journey and just what you need to fix, just what you need to repair, just what you need to elevate. The soulmate comes to help you to discover that. Sometimes the soulmate comes to help you to do that work. But I'm not adverse to the words. I'm just sort of adverse to how it's often taught or instructed. And I find it suspicious that, in the heterosexual community, it's always about love and it's always about the male and the female. And in the spirit realm, there's not even male and female. So you might very well be married, but your twin flame may be your best girlfriend if you're a woman. Or you might indeed, be married and have children as a man, but your soulmate might be another man with a similar artistic skill, a similar business idea that the two of you eventually grow together into some mega industry. So we've got to look bigger than just first, second, and third chakras. And I'm not suggesting that that's you, Fire Reds, because I know you knew what you was talking about when you asked the question. But I just mean in general, people lose sight of that idea that there could be a coming together for business, for economics, for a much bigger purpose than just love. And sometimes the love in the twin flame business, as you coin it, just adds to the confusion of a thing. Just adds to the cycling of imbalance and balance that naturally exists with soulmates and twin flames who often follow each other through many lifetimes. What rituals would I suggest for new and or full moon? Now, when I hesitate, I'm often trying to be diplomatic. The stream ain't freezing, I'm hesitating. Like many things that you hear me then come behind and say, pop culture, commercialization, new age influence, which is often predicated on economics. The deal that we make about the moon is very different than how our ancient ancestors viewed the moon. And understand that we've got Stonehenge and the pyramids and uh, Machu Picchu and other great locales, sacred spaces that clearly left carved in stone markers of looking at space, identifying what's going on in space. I think we have separated the moon to some degree from everything else that's going on in the sky. We can indeed pay equal attention to the sun. We can indeed pay equal attention to the comets and shooting stars and to the movements of the planets. Indeed, it's a reduced form of astrology, I guess, a reduced form of astrology and horoscope. I think it's important to charge your stones, charge your crystals, to mark not only the full moon and the new moon cycle, but every movement of the moon, because it suggests a rotation that we're all inevitably moving through as riders on this planet Earth. So I can't say that there's a specific ritual for that. It also is predicated on your level of awareness. Now, Voodoo practitioners will have a very specific thing. E5 practitioners will have a very specific thing. There are certain types of reading and divination that are performed under the guidance of the moon that show up under very specific names in Osei E5. So, absolutely, there are major players in what we do. But in the ritualizing of them, I think it depends on what system you're already operating in, what type of magic you're already operating in, how much knowledge you have about each cycle of the moon, and then how that affects what we do or what you do and are doing on a given day. And again, in terms of your rituals that you are talking about, speaking to. So that's a great question. It's a complicated one. Like most things, I think there's a prescription. And when we think of prescriptions, they absolutely should be individualized. We hate the idea that the pharmaceutical companies is, you know, giving out medications wholesale because you're a particular age or you're a particular sex or you're of a particular race. And that's how I view horoscopes and some of the most basic forms of astrology and how we sort of interact with the moon. I think that if you're really that concerned about the new moon and the full moon, Tamika, also understand the other parts, the other cycles um, of the moon, and how that also plays into your ritual. The other planets, and then the other events that are happening. Earthquakes also, and other Earth-like signs also show up. And that goes back to my whole preaching about keeping a journal. You know, the more detail in your journal, the better, and the more you can then personalize those rituals and those that work that you're doing into a more effective way. Mariana, um, please, in the future, type your questions in the capital letters. I'm having a hard time seeing what you wrote. Okay. It's okay to see on YouTube every day lots of tarot readings. Is that okay? Is your question? Um, and you also are asking, you're confused, looking for answers. Okay. Yeah, just write your questions in capital letters so that that makes it easier for me to clarify. But I think your first question was about looking at um, tarot readings on YouTube. And I say this about tarot, period, especially to you all who are tarot, up and coming tarot readers, learning to be tarot readers, perpetrating as tarot readers, um, wannabe tarot readers. Every time you turn the card over, you're opening fate. Every time. So even if you're here, I'm here in my space, and I uh, turn a card over, that energy is now open on the table, even if it ain't nobody else in here but me. Now you see, I'm not even showing the face of these cards. Now I've done so. I think it was in the first or the second show. And I went into detail about what was on the card, and I can't remember now what it was. I do know it was a master card. But just like we have sort of this idea that playing with the Ouija board is somehow dangerous, that there's some in operating with the Ouija board without knowledge. And most people accept that. But somehow we relegated, going back to commercialism and pop culture and social media, tarot cards to some realm of folly that you just stop in Dunkin' Donuts to pick up a deck of cards on your way out and either start reading for yourself and or other people. And the reality is every time I did a real good fact, one of my most popular videos is on what they don't tell you about readings of divination. All forms of divination, divining, the act of divining a power, have powers attached to it, have rules attached to it, protocols attached to it. So I don't just turn over cards randomly. Down in the French Quarter, you see psychic readers in Jackson Square. I'm not gonna call nobody out. Y'all know who y'all are. And you waiting on the next guy, the next girl, and you just doing rolls of cards, you know, because you ain't got nothing else to do. And then you're wondering why you're still homeless. You're wondering why your life is all jacked up. You're wondering why you robbing Peter to pay Paul every day. And your business, if that's what it is, your practice, if that's what it is not being fruitful for you. You're manipulating the fates. The fates. And there are many stories about the fates and many world cultures and many world traditions. The fates exist in ancient Egypt. The fates exist in Greek. The fates existed in Rome. So just start studying, you're manipulating the fates, F-A-T-E, with an S on it, fates, every time you turn a card, every time. And that's why your card should be kept in a box or kept in a bag or wrapped and covered up in a sacred material, in a consecrated material, should be kept in a secure place, should not be played with by your friends or your children, because it's a sacred item. It's a sacred item. And not just like a book, uh, you know, you're asking the universe to get involved when you open a deck of cards. You're asking the universe to show you the inner workings of a person's destiny. Another thing that I want to say real quick, not that you asked it, but I feel like I should say it now, is you can't read people without their permission. You can't. Now, if you're a natural reader, born with the gift, hours a day, I can read every single person in this group right now. I hear chatter, I hear conversation, I hear your ancestors, I hear some of you all's concerns, I hear the real reason why some of you all are here, what it is that you truly want. But I don't have the permission to go randomly into other people's fates without a purpose. The universe don't give us access to people's fates unless there's a purpose. So just a random radio being on in your head and a random television station being on the other side of your head and a chorus singing in the background 24 hours a day would drive any human crazy. So there has to be an order, a protocol of how you interact with these spirits, how you conduct activities with these spirits, and how you train yourself and these spirits the moments to come through and speak. And so in laying down the cards and setting up that sacred space and laying down the cards, that is a part of the ritual, the pre-ritual Sister asked about, Tamika, when she talked about the high sop and she mentioned pre-ritual. That's a part of it. So even in doing Ifa, shell readings, it's a whole series of prayers and incantations and chants that go along with that. That can't often be done in a telephone call. That can't often be done in a chat session. But a legitimate practitioner is doing that work before, during, and after. If my place wasn't such a mess right now from all the beating and sewing, I would scan this room to show you what's right around me in terms of what you need access to while you're operating in these traditions. So no, to be more direct about your question. So too many of these videos, particularly with these people who can't govern what's being released in those videos, I would be careful. I would be careful. Even in learning your decks, often your deck should come with a book, particularly these new decks that are not built in traditional traditional tarot form at all. But your deck should come with the book. Study your deck in the book. Learn what the cards mean. Learn the symbolism. Learn the symbolism on the cards. But don't just randomly turn your cards over and over and over. That's not a good thing. All respect and praises to the Most High and the ancestors, Diane Arias, and to those who've gone before. Anytime someone of any prominence in our community passes on, there's always some extended conversation, and there should be. We should acknowledge the dead. We should acknowledge the ancestors. We should acknowledge those who move on and move forward. And when I think of not just Chief Amachi, but Dr. Sabi and other powerful people who passed on in most recent times, I think first we have to allow some time to allow their spirits to rest, particularly if these stories are controversial. I also think too, sometimes it's too soon to really look inside some of the work and careers of some of these individuals, because then again you're going to end up in the competition, the confusion, the who said, what may have been, and so on. So I do have a feeling about it. I do have an opinion. I do. Um, I don't know if I'm ready to share it in this space, in this place at this time. I'm not even sure everybody knows what we're saying or who we're talking about or even story. Um, but I will respond. I will. Just not right now. Just not right now. Mariana, you're asking about placing a curse on someone and then retracting it and then taking it back. I think that's a really good question. We can go in many directions with this. First things is, if it's a legitimate curse, if it's legitimate, we're going to assume that it's a legitimate, that you absolutely knew what you're doing and the curse worked, and now you feel apologetic. Um, that's why curse work, ritual work, dark magic, binding, all this control magic, that's why there's so many protocols involved. That's why I preach against it all the time. That's why I speak to people who foolishly operate in it all the time, because it's so easy to get caught up, to get trapped. And not only do you work a curse against a target, but it also shows up for you. So it can show up in your finances, it can show up in your health, it can show up in the health of other people in your family. It can show up in other ways. And we have to look at how angry were you when you did this work? How serious were you? How real was the system that you utilized when you did this work? And how angry were you? Some things can't be taken back. Some things cannot be retracted. All energy is eternal. All energy is infinite. All energy was created and manifested into the world at once. So in doing any type of curse work, uh, you're calling that thing out, and you're focusing attention on that thing, and then you're projecting it out back out into the universe. And so it has to fulfill its course. If it's real, if it's legitimate. Now, sometimes a curse can travel in the evil eye. Sometimes a curse can travel in, a shady, unkind word. I hope you die. I hope something really bad happens to you. But again, in that moment, the ancestors, God or goddess, the universal mind, if you will, the Akashic records, are not only checking your curse, but they're also checking the deservability of the person that you're focusing work on. You really can't focus work on someone who is undeserving. You can't do a curse on a virgin, and we mean that literally, more figuratively more. If someone is clean, done no harm, has no built up karma, you can't curse them anyway. But indeed, if they are, then once that has been activated, it's out there. Also, your slate is also looked at. How forgiving have you been? How many people in the world have wanted to curse you, through some behavior that maybe you did or didn't do, or can't remember doing? All of that is weighed in the scales when real curse work is being done. So if the person is not deserving, if you got dirty hands, then that curse wouldn't work. But if indeed it was a legitimate curse, a legitimate system, a legitimate target, but then now you somehow feel apologetic for it, that won't undo a curse just within itself. No. And then you would absolutely need uh, more qualified help. Uh, yes, they do come back on you, Tamika Miller, 3 times. In some codes, it's even 7 times. Um, but absolutely everything that you send out returns. So there's no such thing as just being entirely wicked, entirely selfish, entirely ego-based, entirely about yourself, and operating in any of these forms of magic, voodoo or any other form, and then not have it harm you, hurt you, or then hurt those that you love. We've seen even over the course of history, people who've wanted fame and fortune and celebrity and lost almost everyone in their family, um, to prop up their careers. We also know situations, scenarios where that has happened naturally, but involuntarily, as in the case of Patti LaBelle, lost her mother to cancer and thought she would be dead by 35. Uh, she lived a pure life as far as we know, a clean life as far as we know. Um, and so the ancestors have blessed her now with long reach, long life, uh, a greater sense of power and stability. So you've got to be as clear as crystal. You've got to be clear about who you are, what you're operating in. Be honest with yourself about your level of awareness of what you're operating in when you start doing spell work and ritual work on yourself or other people. You can absolutely harm yourself. I appreciate questions like that, Tamika Miller, because people in the room need to hear that. People who watch the show need to hear that. People who see so much occult symbolism in social media every day, and particularly when we think about our young people. We have young people with us now. I've got starting 16, 14, 12 years old, um, stalking the voodoo, stalking, every appearance that I make on television. So your children and your children's children and your children's friends are absorbing what I say and do, but also what you all in this room are saying and doing. So we've got to be more authentic about what we know, what we don't know, be willing to admit what we don't know. In all my, eldership and experience and teaching, I still got elders on speed dial, y'all. I still got Babalaos, Ianifas, Hogans, Mambos on my block, but also globally that I can access. Some of you know Mambo Marie. I can go 4 or 5 houses down and see Mambo Marie. I hugged her neck this morning. So the idea that anybody can operate in these traditions in isolation. I don't care where you live. I don't want to hear there's no other practitioners in my town. There's no bookstores in my town. There's no botanicas in my town. There's no one else here for me to connect with. So that's an excuse for me to just do what I'm doing. No, you found me, you got internet. And stop looking to all these people, for services. Build relationships, get to know people. I've said in a previous show, you'd be surprised what you would get from me if some of you all had better social skills. I've had a few people actually respond to that too, and it's been very pleasant for all of us. But most of you, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. Keep coming. Keep coming. It works if you work it. Keep coming back. Give me the next question. I hope I'm not saying these out of order because the screen does keep moving on me. And so I keep going back and looking for my capitalized questions because I can't see the lowercase questions that clearly without having to read everything that's in chat. And that would cause dead air time. So I want your questions and your comments you want me to respond to in capital letters so that I can distinguish them from the rest of the conversation. Diane Ayres, who asked some of the best questions, what's the best way to destroy witches that have violated and abused their power, been attacked many times wrongly? Now, your question suggests, and forgive me for assumptions, your question suggests a certain level of knowledge. When I hear you say I've been attacked, it presumes a certain level of knowledge for me, okay? Because I can't be attacked like that. I just can't. If I could, I wouldn't be here. It's too many haters out there, probably one or two in this room, and the one or two that goes through and clicks, the negatives on my YouTube videos, who absolutely would not want me to be here. Competition would not want me to be here. It's certain Christians who hatefully do not want me to be here. So the idea again that you can be under attack suggests barriers to your spiritual wall. And we all suffer that, just like we all suffer barriers to our immune system and open ourselves up to the cold and the flu and to staph infections and to pink eye. We indeed open ourselves up, no matter how mighty, how educated, how powerful you are in any of these traditions, to spiritual attacks. What I'm trying to clarify is having the knowledge to respond, having the knowledge to fight back. I also think that if you're seeking a battle, who you describe as witches, who manage to reach you frequently, you might not be able to handle this. And so you may either need to seek help or do the work to get yourself to the level where you can handle this on your own. And if you're doing this to the work that you can handle this on your own, then your words are going to show up differently. Being attacked many times would be more of a parable, a telling of how things can be addressed, as opposed to as you're presenting it, still seeking some kind of some kind of retribution, some kind of adjustment. So I don't want to assume too much, especially in a public forum like this. And that's why I appreciate that no one has tried to get a free reading. But that's why I don't like to do readings live on air, because it's a slippery slope into getting into people's personal information, personal business, or even assuming. Now, Diane Arias, this question might not be about her at all, but somebody looking might think she's talking about herself, and then I'm explaining what it is and how it works. So I'm speaking in general terms. Someone who's being reached, who's under attack, need help. So if you got the flu, you got the cold, so you need a clinician, you need a medical practitioner. At the minimum, you might need, some over-the-counter medication. But over-the-counter, in spiritual terms, is going to the Botanica and buying a bunch of stuff on your own and thinking you are doing real work. Red in cloth, mystique, daydreamer in voodoo is about blood. Voodoo, and when I say voodoo, I'm using it in a more universal context. That includes a Khan, Fan, Eve, the Sangomas in South Africa, Egyptology. All of that is voodoo, in my opinion, in the African world perspective. Okay, so blood is critical to all these traditions. Voodoo is a blood tradition. So red in voodoo, whether you're talking West Africa, Haiti, or Louisiana, or African American presence in the Americas, is symbolic of blood, but it's also symbolic of power. I'm going to use a deity that's universal. Ogu is universal. You find Ogu in Yoruba, you find Ogu in Akan, you find Ogu in Haitian voodoo, you find Ogu in Louisiana voodoo. Ogu is universal. Ogu's colors often are not red at all. Green, black, some other colors, but we often use red with Ogu to symbolize blood, action, activity, power, empowerment. It's also considered a root color, red. So for you meditators out there, you Hindus, you Buddhists, those of you who understand the Kundalini, those of you who understand chakras, chakra systems, this is something that Reiki practitioners should absolutely know. Red is often a color that's also associated with the earth, with the ground, with your base chakra. So red can also be carnal. Red can also be survival, basic survival needs or instincts. So yes, color symbolism is important in all manifestations of voodoo. Uh, Red is often used in voodoo, but we do use other colors. Divine greetings, salutations, Aziza, welcome to the group. Michelle, thank you for being present. James, Demisho, thank you for being present. I appreciate you. I think everybody, if I didn't call your name, I appreciate you for being present. Um, I'm looking for the next question, so give me a moment here. How can you reverse negative energy back to people that are trying to harm you? Now, that's a great question, particularly in conjunction with Diane Ayres' question about attacking witches. Now, there are prophylactic practices within hoodoo, voodoo, root work, conjure that can be utilized to turn back negative energy. Um, the law of mirrors is one of them. Within my house, in my initiations, part of that process is learning universal laws, magical laws, and one of them is the law of mirrors. The law that which you send out returns unto you. Also, the law that which is projected at you can be reflected back or away from you. And it does start first in color, understanding that white as a color reflects all colors. Black as a color draws all colors unto it. Okay, so that is part of how we access and utilize the law of mirrors. There's a hoodoo practice of strategically placing mirrors within your living quarters to also reflect back, send back energies that are projected at you. I use a lot of mirrors. Many of my mirrors are hidden. You have mirrors projected at you right now. I don't have a ancestral suit that does not have mirrors on them. You can also use members of the mineral kingdom to reflect back and send back energy, both to reflect, but also to draw in and destroy. Black obsidian is a great mineral to use in dark work. People who are seeking to harm you, do things to create imbalance, disruption. However, black obsidian works like a black hole, so it actually draws negativity to it. So it's necessary to use clear quartz, topaz, another clear, high vibrating stone to get clarity about what's happening and to then resolve it. But black obsidian will then bring the truth of a thing to a surface, like a truth stone, but it can also suck that energy in and send it to another place in universal time space away from you. But in terms of you then being able to see it, clarify it, identify it, without you then doing the work with your clear stones, you won't have access to that. The energy will be removed from you, will be sent away from you, will be projected away from you, but may return cyclically, seasonally, if you don't then address specifically what it is that you're battling. Voodoo can absolutely heal sickness. Voodoo can absolutely heal disease. Now, um, this is a tricky area because here in the States, we have laws. about health, about medicine, about science, about the handling of volatile materials, all of the above. So a voodoo practitioner cannot do or claim to do the work of a doctor. Do I address health in my practice? Absolutely. I address my own health. I'm a diabetic. I have my own health complications that I deal with. And many of us who come to not only voodoo, Christianity, or any other religion, often do so because we have our own stuff, our own issues that we are addressing. Um, but I don't claim miraculous healings. No, I don't claim ridiculous um, results from doing any specific sort of work. Absolutely not. But do I believe voodoo can heal sickness? Absolutely. I believe meditation can heal sickness. I believe yoga can heal sickness. But I'm not one to confuse that with what's real and what's fiction. Dealing with mental health issues, that's also a good one, being that mental health is overlooked and to some degree run amok in society today. And so many of us are dealing with mental health issues, particularly in the realm of spirituality and religion. Again, people are looking for healing. Um, I'm sorry, what's your name again? Uh, the gentleman who just asked, oh, James Demoshe. Absolutely. People are looking for healing, looking for remedies, looking for better ways of health, better ways to have greater energy, better ways of having sexual prowess, all of these things. Thank you, Imani Sankofa, also for asking the question about mental health, which I think is a critical point of conversation, not just in the Black community, but in the world community, particularly in the Western community where we are so detached from nature. So people are hiding mental health behind ego and vanity and carnality and materialism and consumerism and so many other things. And in some ways, it has become more politically, socially acceptable to discuss mental health, while at the same time, in my opinion, it has become almost less socially acceptable to call mental health out when we see it in truth. And so, oh, I'm not crazy. Don't accuse me of this, and especially in our community where we still have a very negative attitude about psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, consultants, um, and just, to make it clear, the industry is not doing enough to provide qualified people in mental health either who can deal with diversity, racial differences, sexual identity differences, cultural class differences. I also don't think there are enough educated people coming out of these universities then going into mental health to also address. So that feeds the already prevalent fear and blockage that we have to addressing mental health. And then you add pharmaceuticals to it, uh, then now you're opening up a whole nother can of worms. Sometimes you have to trick people into their better health. I watched Black Ink Crew last night. I know some of you watch Black Ink, and Four had some kind of breakdown. Um, talked about harming himself, talked about being suicidal. I appreciated how the house handled that in the moment, particularly Charmaine. I did not have a whole lot of good feelings about Charmaine in the course of Black Ink historically, but she showed up in what I saw last night in terms of them sort of getting a handle on what was appearing to be a crisis. But what also stood out to me was that it was common knowledge, particularly when they got Ford's brother on the phone, that he had been dealing with depression since childhood. He had been dealing with mental health since childhood. So if you don't have close friends, family, spouse, lover, somebody who really cares, that's making sure that you are, taking your medication or making your consultations or doing your therapy, many people then, especially in America and Western culture, where it's me, myself, and I, feel like I can handle this. This is my own thing. Um, and in many cases, feel there's nothing wrong unless they're operating at the high octaves or the really low lows. And when we get really low, suicidal, depressive, possibly harming to self and others, then we think, okay, mental health is really important. Or those highs. And some of you are demonstrating that through your overspending. Hold on for a second. My door just came open. Thank you for your patience. Y'all know I do run a legitimate voodoo temple, and so I'm open during the day, and people come, and sometimes they don't knock or announce themselves, so I always have to check what's going on in the front of the temple. Also, with all the media coverage, uh, the Bradders, Breaking Dad in the UK, actually aired my address and my exact location. So tourists and guests and visitors have been coming through unannounced, which I absolutely do not invite. Please, I could be in ceremony, I can be ritual, schedule an appointment. But back to the question of mental health. I absolutely think that there are ways to protect yourself from the mental illness and the spirits of other people. Because sometimes we are just talking about mental health and all those complications, them worrying on your nerves, you being worried or concerned, all the ways that shows up. But then sometimes we're looking at people with mental health who have also collected jinn, spirits, demons, nuisance spirits, sometimes that are not here to do evil, but just to create mischief. And so there are ways to protect, and that's where your dark stones again come into play. Your onyx, your black obsidian, your black tourmaline is another great stone to utilize in sort of that sort of protective work. Stones that elevate, like amethyst. Amethyst has the highest vibratory rate of all the crystalline family. It's also seen as a sobriety stone. So keeping large clusters of pure, deep purple amethyst in your environment as well as on your body can be very beneficial to bringing some balance to some of their behavior and then some of the energy that might be manifesting because of the mental health issues. Thank you for that question, Imani Sankofa. If I need to say more, just respond back to me in capital letters. I can certainly appreciate that. I would leave it pure. Shamanic mystic, I would leave it pure. Again, just like the red cloth, the red brick is also symbolic of blood. Um, some of you understand Yoruba. Um, Ero's sun, one of the 16 principal Odus is Ero's sun. When you're throwing shells, it often shows up as number 4. Ero's sun literally translates into menstrual blood. So the idea of laying the red brick dust down has some biblical similarities in the children who of Israelites who marked their door with the blood of the lamb to prevent the plague, the death of the first sons that swept Egypt from affecting their house. So it's not just something that, Skeleton Key the movie created, but it is a sign, it is a symbolic sign of marking blood, marking a covenant at your front door for both the ancestors and the spirits that are within your house. Another symbolic um, uh, demonstration of blood common to E5 is palm oil. Palm oil, if you don't know, is used as a libation, as an offering, but it's also a symbolic representation for blood. So there is no voodoo without blood. There is no vegan, vegetarian voodoo. And I absolutely would keep the red brick unadulterated, because you already got people coming in, crossing over it, um, quite possibly, dropping dust, dirt from their shoes, um, if they're innocent, leaving tricks in your house if they not. So I would keep the red brick pure. I wouldn't mix it with anything. Thank you, Kamina. I appreciate that. Please do type your questions in capital letters. It's really hard for me to see smaller type um, without looking crazy, without bending into the screen and all that kind of stuff. I am an actor and a performer, so I do want to maintain my camera readiness while the show continues these last 5 or 10 minutes or so. But I also want to be able to read your questions or comments without distorting the image. Sanchez Dean, I see you got a couple of question marks there, but I'm looking for your question. Um, the fastest way to access your psychic senses other than meditation. I like how you said the fastest way. Um, and forgive me, I'm not trying to be shady, but we all want the fastest way, Sanchez. We all want the most immediate. What's the fastest way to learn to play the piano? What's the fastest way to learn to play basketball at a professional athletic level at any age? So you've got to first be very honest with yourself about where you are spiritually. How much study and research have you really done? Um, yes, just like you go to university and you take 101, or you take theory, music theory, before you actually pick up an instrument. So too, I feel the same way about psychic sense and psychic abilities. So reading about various forms of psychic abilities, how psychic abilities manifest, keeping a journal, all of those things are critical to not only developing your gift, but being able to operate in it, understanding what your gift means, understanding how your personal gift shows up. So fastest way, I don't know about the fastest way. Also using very specific stones like amethyst, and there are a few others that help to elevate psychic abilities, psychic awareness. I would also ask about, I don't expect you to respond to me here live on the air. Please don't. But I would also ask about your personal life, your childhood, any blocks in your family, and how that then too shows up as a block to you gaining full access to your psychic senses and your psychic abilities. So meditation is critical. Meditation is critical. But there are other ways. I just fast. I couldn't even explain the other ways here on the show fast. So just keep doing the work, keep studying, keep a journal, keep documenting. Um, More so than are there herbal formulas that can help, I would look at what you're eating. I would look at your diet. I would look at how much artificial foods and how much meat and how much sugar and fat you're consuming. I would look at a more organic lifestyle. I would look at a more produce and herb and plant based uh, diet as opposed to just herbal formulas per se to heighten or increase your psychic senses or your psychic abilities. You can clean karma through actions you live, volunteering, getting involved in society. It's very curious to me when I hear grown folks, people over 35, say that they're bored, especially the day of social media and the internet, where not only are we seeing, a lot of BS and nonsense, but we're also seeing a lot of real world issues in a new way because of Facebook and Instagram that we haven't seen before. Me Too and Black Lives Matter and Trayvon Martin movements, and all of these things were ways of utilizing this technology and people realizing that there was more to do than just ourselves in our personal lives, in our social lives. So cleaning karma is about getting out into the lane of society, understanding that you're here not just because of who you are and what you've done and how you've lived, but also that of your family, that of your lineage, and then that of the community. Anybody who would say they had that perfect life absolutely should be out in the street, should absolutely be giving and involved. But then those of us who are struggling to find that perfect life, uh, again, I found that answer to my own mental health, to my own depressive episodes, to my own troubled background, to my own background as a teenage runaway, through service to others, through service to others. And again, I have to keep saying it because it's so relevant today. It's more than just, going to the store and buying a pack of tarot cards and saying you feel spiritual. It's really about committing, beloved, to doing that work to clarify karma. I'm answering you, Mariana. Um, you have to be willing to do that work, both inwardly and outwardly. And yes, meditation plays a role in that. Sometimes going back through those episodes, through those events that won't escape you, those things that hold karma, but then they will also show up in your dreams, show up in your past life regressive work, of all those things that go into how we view karma. Is burying things an important step in universal requests? No, burying things are important in some crystal work, crystal clearing and the such. Burying things can be important in ancestral work and Egun work, Gede, Galede work. Burying things can be important in terms of binding something or someone and limiting the power of something or someone. Burying things can be in death rituals and the idea of killing a person, place, or thing. And that's where burying and putting things in the ground take on importance in the practices and the traditions. Do I do appointments to heal from sickness? Absolutely. Send me a email request at DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. I will respond. I will suggest a donation. I will suggest a consultation because, like going to the doctor, we should look at exactly what it is that we would be doing work on. So yes, DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. I'll be more than happy to assist you with that. I have a great more experience with health than I suggest in social media or live on camera. I kind of laid out earlier in the show why it's too tricky to get into legalities and complicated legalities with people over health. Um, so I only take serious requests about health. I only take reasonable requests about health. Um, don't send me any more requests about babies, about harming babies. Don't send me any more requests about eliminating unwanted children. You got the wrong guy. Um, and for those here present, I'm not talking to James. I'm talking to someone else who keeps sending me requests about health. the health of a baby, unplanned baby, that he now wants something done about. No, we can't do that. I'm here for you in your serious requests, in your integritous request, in your requests that bring balance, that bring wholeness, that bring justice, that bring vindication, that bring love. But I'm not here for any foolishness. I'm really not. Um, I appreciate you as well. I'm going to try and pronounce your name, Vancois, Vancois. I believe that's Vancois. If I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, please forgive me. I certainly appreciate you for taking the time to be present here. And before I forget, I also appreciate you all's support. Absolutely, I couldn't eat. I wouldn't be in housing. I wouldn't have lights on. I wouldn't have internet. I wouldn't be able to afford a feather or a plume, a sequence or bead if it were not for the help, the financial help and support of my community. Please do utilize PayPal. I'm still not fully educated about the donation button here in YouTube. I invite you to use my PayPal, paypal.me/the Divine Prince, or utilize my website directly. There's a PayPal button there at www.houseofthedivineprince.com. All is truly and indeed a blessing. But yes, James, please schedule an appointment. I'm not sure what's going on, Kamina, with comments and questions being rejected. Even some of your messages have been rejected. So I don't know what's being said. For some reason, YouTube is blocking some of the posts in the chat. We've talked a little bit about psychic attacks and utilizing mirrors, both real mirrors, like what you can get from the dollar store, but also mineral mirrors. Mirrors made out of stone, like black obsidian, onyx, granite, things that either send back energy or ground energy. Also, wearing a talisman. I just happen to wear a large talisman, but this is my talisman. For some of you, this might be a little bit big and a little bit heavy. But this is my talisman. This has been on my neck since at least 1987, 1988. It is how I protect my energy, both inwardly and outwardly. Your quartz, especially that you are using to protect, has to be cleansed. So in the bathing, the showering, I've already got it on. I don't take it off a whole lot. And then when I do, it is purified in other ways. But wearing of talismans, wearing of clear or a quartz that is able to trap energy, often including quartz, tourmalated quartz, chlorinated quartz, quartz that have inclusions in it, also rutilated quartz, are able to trap those energies in them, and then you can cleanse them away, wash them away. What is my teaching on okay, Kayamina, you're asking me really about masturbating while you're trying to work on your higher conjuring and ritual spiritual needs and gifts. Um, Indeed, sex is a release of energy, but also the storing of sexual energy is important in operating in magic. There's also a way of coming together, uh, twin flames, soulmates, in terms of utilizing sexual power, like tantric meditation, in a way of generating power to increase your work. But just the idea of just recreational masturbation and ritual work, I don't suggest that. No more than an athlete, a pro athlete, Mike Tyson, would suggest sex the day before a fight, the day before a battle. I certainly do appreciate you, and that might be why your questions are being blocked. YouTube YouTube want to know why this girl is asking about masturbation and sex in her ritual questions. So yes, indeed. I certainly appreciate you all. It's been a full 2 hours. I appreciate the fact that 30 people stayed for the duration of 2 hours and felt it important enough to be here. I certainly do appreciate that. I'm open to your questions, comments, and requests during and about the show, ways that we can improve the show, things that we can do here in this space to keep you present here with me at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for the Power Lunch Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Time is getting close to Carnival. I don't have a lot of extra time. I know some of you don't mean any harm. I don't have free time. There's no such thing as free time. So if you're going to email me, you got to be specific. You got to tell me what it is you need. You got to tell me what it is that you want. You got to speak your truth. You got to stand in your truth. Otherwise, I'm going to give you the professional response and wait for you to take an action that gives me a clearer direction of how to move forward with you. I appreciate you all for being here, remembering that you and I both are God and Goddess. We are here to manifest that which is divine. We're here to manifest and be examples and demonstrations of the ancestors, the evolution of the ancestors, but also of the voodoo. And I will be present, barring some casting call. I will be present here at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for the Power Lunch Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. I am accepting your requests for readings, consultations, initiations, and ritual work by way of email, DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. If you reach out to me on Instagram, I'm going to say peace and blessings. Send me a request by way of email. And of course, your donations. I certainly appreciate you all offering and asking about donations, particularly live when the show is going on. I know many of you are looking at that $ donation button, and I appreciate that. I would just prefer that you would use PayPal. PayPal.me/The Divine Prince. If you don't got that, you can reach it at my website, houseofthedivineprince.com, or send me an email at DivinePrince@houseofthedivineprince.com. Until next time, all is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe, Asheo, Elasti, Ashe, Aibobo. Until next time, all is a blessing.